remember her eyes, not as they were, but as they demanded to be seen, soft, infinite, filled with trembling galaxies. But you know now they were mirrors, not stars. Mirrors that begged for a reflection strong enough to shatter them. And you smiled like a fool, offering truth as if it were a gift, not a guillotine. There is a scent you cannot name, not perfume older, the scent of danger dressed as devotion. She didn't tremble because you touched her. She trembled because you didn't flinch when she tried to disguise control as affection. You've seen it, in her kindness, a blade, in her fear, a theater, in her love, a bargain. You were never meant to be adored. You were meant to be tested, torn, worshipped, if you won. Not for your gentleness, but for the violence it takes to stay unpossessed. So ask yourself, when she looked at you like salvation, were you the man who could save her, or the one she secretly hoped would ruin her illusions and leave her with nothing but herself? You believed her softness meant safety, that the tremble in her voice, the flicker in her lashes, the breathless pauses between words all pointed to vulnerability. But you forgot the most dangerous illusions do not scream. They seduce. They wrap themselves in silk, not steel. They ask questions not to learn, but to test. Every time she looked up at you with eyes that shimmered like dew, she was not surrendering. She was measuring. Could you cut deeper than her dreams? Would you hesitate when she dropped the mask? She smiled at your strength, but only when it made her feel stronger. She praised your sensitivity, but only when it fed her power. The moment you tried to be good, you began to lose her. She does not want your goodness, she wants your edge. The one you hide from the world, the one that does not flinch when beauty tries to conquer it. There is a hidden hunger in women that no poetry dares name, not to be loved, but to be seen without mercy, and not merely seen shattered, not for cruelty's sake, but for the ecstasy of awakening. She wants to be broken in the place where her lies begin. You were taught to offer her affection, but what she craves is exposure. And that is the one thing you're too afraid to give because you still believe in the fairy tale she uses as camouflage. You thought she would love you more if you became safer, kinder, gentler. But each act of softness, if not rooted in strength, only fed her contempt. She never said it. She smiled, thanked you, curled into your warmth while her soul turned colder. You didn't see it, because you mistook her comfort for connection. But she was mourning something, mourning the death of the man who once made her question herself, the one whose presence was sharp enough to awaken her chaos, not pacify it. Her longing is not for a man who bows before her light. It is for the one who burns it into ash. You think this makes her cruel? It does not. It makes her human. She cannot love what she can manipulate. She cannot desire what she already owns. So the moment you surrender your judgment, the moment you abandon your throne to sit at her feet, she sees what she fears most, a man who fears her. And no woman worships the God who kneels to her shadow. You still carry that boyish ache to be accepted, and she can smell it. Like blood in water, every compliment she gives you is laced with this unspoken test. Will he need this to feel real? The more you seek approval, the more you die to her. This is not about dominance. That would be too easy. It is about indifference to illusion. The kind of man who can stare at beauty and not flinch, who sees the mask and doesn't fall in love with it. You want her love, then betray her fantasy. Look her in the eyes and do not mirror back her performance. She cries, do not chase. She accuses, do not justify. She offers herself, do not lose yourself. Every gesture is an echo of a deeper scream. Will you stay still when I spin if you do? She collapses. If you don't, she rises above you. She tests because she needs to. It is not manipulation, it is instinct. And your failure is not that you didn't pass. Your failure is that you resented being tested, that you flinched when the storm came, that you begged for understanding instead of mastering silence. She wanted a flame, you brought her a mirror. She wanted war, you gave her compromise, so she turned her back not out of anger, but mourning the man she glimpsed in you once before you chose safety over sovereignty. And now you are haunted, not by her absence, but by what you became in her presence. You know this, that slow decay, that invisible erosion, the way you censored yourself just a little each time she tilted her head, the way you praised things you didn't admire, agreed with things that made you die inside, nodded like a priest in a temple built to worship her comfort. You let her believe she was the center, and in doing so, you ceased to be. You thought she would love you more if you became safer, kinder, gentler. But each act of softness, if not rooted in strength, only fed her contempt. She never said it. She smiled, thanked you, curled into your warmth while her soul turned colder. You didn't see it, because you mistook her comfort for connection. But she was mourning something, mourning the death of the man who once made her question herself, the one whose presence was sharp enough to awaken her chaos, not pacify it. Her longing is not for a man who bows before her light. It is for the one who burns it into ash. You think this makes her cruel. It does not. It makes her human. She cannot love what she can manipulate. She cannot desire what she already owns. So the moment you surrender your judgment, the moment you abandon your throne to sit at her feet, she sees what she fears most, a man who fears her. And no woman worships the God who kneels to her shadow. You still carry that boyish ache to be accepted, and she can smell it, like blood in water. Every compliment she gives you is laced with this unspoken test. Will he need this to feel real? The more you seek approval, the more you die to her. Not because she is unkind, but because nature abhors weakness wrapped in charm. She wants the man who doesn't wait for her applause, who speaks the brutal thing she tried to hide behind eyeliner and perfume. She wants the one who walks into her myth and demolishes it. This is not about dominance. That would be too easy. It is about indifference to illusion. The kind of man who can stare at beauty and not flinch, who sees the mask and doesn't fall in love with it, who touches her soul not to heal it, but to extract the lie she clings to, the lie that she is the one in control, the lie that her emotions are sacred, the lie that her longing is pure. You, fool, thought it was noble to protect her from pain, but the only man she cannot forget is the one who dragged her through it and made her love him anyway. You want her love, then betray her fantasy. Look her in the eyes and do not mirror back her performance. She cries, do not chase. She accuses, do not justify. She offers herself, do not lose yourself. Every gesture of hers is an echo of a deeper scream. Will you stay still when I spin? If you do, she will collapse into you. If you don't, she will rise above you, because she does not want to lead. She wants to orbit around a man who cannot be seduced by the false sacredness of her drama. She tests because she needs to. It is not manipulation, it is instinct. And your failure is not that you didn't pass. Your failure is that you resented being tested, that you flinched when the storm came, that you begged for understanding instead of mastering silence. She wanted a flame. You brought her a mirror. She wanted war. You gave her compromise. So she turned her back, not out of anger, but mourning the man she glimpsed in you once before you chose safety over sovereignty. And now You are haunted, not by her absence, but by what you became in her presence. You know this, that slow decay, that invisible erosion, the way you censored yourself just a little each time she tilted her head, the way you praised things you didn't admire, agreed with things that made you die inside, nodded like a priest in a temple built to worship her comfort. You let her believe she was the center, and in doing so, you ceased to be. Do you remember the moment she looked at you not with love, but calculation? When her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. That was not cruelty. That was the quiet recognition he has become the mask I gave him. And no woman loves her puppet. She may keep him, use him, adore him even, but she does not kneel for him. She does not crave him. Craving is reserved for the one who remains untamed. The man who can look at her and see the lie and still stay. The man who sees her mask crack and does not rush to fix it. The man who speaks truth not for effect, but because it's the only language he respects. You must become that man not for her, but for the silence that watches both of you. The silence that predates romance. The silence that speaks when all performances fail. So you must ask yourself, when she wept, did you kneel? Or did you see? When she raged, did you defend yourself? Or did you remain still and unmoved? When she gave herself, did you give yourself back? Or did you keep your throne and offer presence instead of surrender? There is no equality here, no contract, no balance, only polarity. She is the test, you are the answer. And if you cannot stand still while she dances her illusions around you, she will dance away. She does not want the man who completes her. She wants the man who breaks the spell. She does not want safety. She wants sovereignty reflected back to her in your eyes. She does not want your worship. She wants to see if you can face her without blinking, if you can love her shadow without trying to tame it, if you can destroy her illusions and still remain. And so she will keep testing until you stop proving, until you stop pleading, until you stop needing her to validate the truth you already know. She wants the man who does not tremble, not because he is numb, but because he is free. She wants the smile behind the knife, the calm beneath the collapse, the gaze that doesn't flinch even when her world shatters at his feet. You thought love was mutual, that two souls would meet halfway, drop their armor, and build a temple together brick by honest brick. You thought she longed for safety, craved transparency, wanted a man who would listen, stay, soothe. But you were wrong, not because she lied, but because she played her part in the myth you needed. She gave you softness because she saw your hunger. She offered her mask because you demanded the illusion. You were never her lover. You were her audience. Every word she said was chosen, not for truth, but for leverage. Not because she calculated maliciously, but because she has always known the one who controls the frame, controls the outcome. While you spoke from sincerity, she spoke from instinct. While you offered pieces of your soul, she studied the angles of your need. It is not evil, it is ancient, older than chivalry, older than your fragile masculinity, older than your fairy tales. In the garden of desire, it is not the fruit that tempts it, is the power of being the one who tempts. You mistook vulnerability for innocence, but vulnerability is a currency, and she spent it well. When she cried, you listened. When she turned away, you chased. When she doubted herself, you reassured her, and every time you did, the scale tipped further away from you. Because in this dance, the one who reacts loses, the one who explains submits, the one who justifies confesses weakness. You were never fighting for love. You were negotiating for dignity, and you were outmatched. But seduction is strategy. Every glance, a test. Every silence, a provocation. Every delayed reply, a shift in control. You believed you were deepening intimacy. She was adjusting the leash. The more transparent you became, the more predictable you became. And predictability is death to desire. She wanted mystery. You gave her availability. She wanted the unknown. You handed her a confession. She asked nothing, and you gave everything. You handed her a confession. She asked nothing, and you gave everything. The tragedy is not that she played you. The tragedy is that she didn't need to. You played yourself. You offered your crown in exchange for affection. You abdicated sovereignty to be liked. And she, sharp, feral, ancient, simply accepted your surrender. Because what woman respects a man who hands her the sword and bares his throat? What woman trusts the man who worships her instead of watching her? And yet, you kept dancing. You kept believing this was love, that if you gave enough, softened enough, bent enough, she would return the gesture. But you misunderstood the sacred rule of polarity. No one ever desires what they can possess too easily. The moment you made her the sun, you became the shadow. The moment you placed her above yourself, you disappeared beneath her feet. She did not want to lead, but you forced her to, not by dominance, but by disappearance. This is why she grew cold, why her laughter faded, why her gaze drifted elsewhere. Not because she found someone better, but because she no longer found you. You had erased yourself piece by piece in the name of being chosen. And in doing so, you failed the only test that matters. Can you remain unbent in the presence of power? Can you hold your shape when beauty demands you reshape yourself? She never asked for worship. That was your delusion. She asked for reflection, a mirror that did not distort, a presence that did not dissolve. But you gave her smoke. You gave her apologies. You gave her longing. And longing is repulsive to the feminine unless it is framed by strength. Your desire became noise. Your openness became weight. She was no longer dancing with a man, she was dragging a child through the ruins of his own projections. Understand this, she does not need to win. She needs to feel the resistance, the tension, the risk, the feeling that you could leave at any moment but choose not to. That you could dominate but choose to watch, that you could expose but choose to see. And when that power is real, not performed, it electrifies her, because deep inside, she does not want the crown. She wants to test if you are still wearing it, but you had already taken it off. When you explained yourself after her silence, when you tried to fix her tears, when you walked on eggshells to avoid confrontation, when you filtered your truths to keep her close. Every time you chose comfort over confrontation, you shrank. Every time you chose peace over principle, you broke the mirror until nothing was left but a boy staring at a goddess, begging for validation. And she hated it, not because you were weak, but because you chose weakness. The most primal betrayal. You see, the masculine is not worshipped for being flawless. It is worshipped for being unmovable, not cruel, not heartless, but firm, rooted, grounded in reality, not her moods, not her fantasies, not her tears, but reality. And reality is this: no woman trusts a man who cannot stand alone in the fire of her performance. She does not want you to mirror her. She wants you to break the mirror, to remind her that the world does not revolve around her emotions, to shatter the illusion that her beauty commands the truth, to refuse her chaos not by silencing it, but by refusing to orbit it. The man who commands the feminine is not the one who controls her, but the one who does not collapse in her storm. And you collapsed. Over and over again, in the name of harmony, of empathy, of love, but she did not feel loved. She felt orphaned, because the man she hoped would rise in the face of her madness had already kneeled. And what is more terrifying to a woman than seeing her power unchecked, than realizing she is the stronger one, than feeling the burden of control when all she wanted was surrender? She will never tell you this. She will blame you, accuse you, cry betrayal, but beneath it all is mourning. Not for your love, but for the man you could have been. The man who could have stared her illusions down without blinking. The man who would have said no when she tried to manipulate. The man who would have walked away rather than become a character in her theater. But instead, you stayed, you adjusted, you justified, you danced, and the dance became grotesque. Two ghosts twirling around a dead fire, you longing for the spark, her longing for the flame. But the flame only exists in the clash, in the refusal, in the tension that demands authenticity or annihilation. You gave her neither, only accommodation, only echoes. And so she left, not always in body, but in soul. She may still smile, still touch you, still whisper the words you want to hear, but the dance is over, the stage is empty, and you are still bowing, long after the music stopped, because you never heard the silence where power lives, the silence where a man stands tall, not for applause, but for truth, not to win her, but to remain himself. That is the only man she craves, the one who dances only with reality, who refuses pretense, who would rather burn alone than bend to be loved. She does not want a partner in the illusion. She wants the man who tears the curtain down and dares to dance alone. She never wanted the ideal man. That's what no one dares admit. Not you, not her, not the poets who still write of everlasting tenderness. The ideal is sterile, predictable, peaceful, but peace suffocates where desire lives. She wanted chaos and control, a blade wrapped in stillness. The man who is not her fantasy, but its executioner. The man who looks like a threat to the story she tells herself about love. You, however, tried to be her dream, and in doing so, you made yourself disposable. She did not kill you. You vanished into the shape of her expectations. You brought her the altar, knelt before her throne, and whispered your worth like a sermon. You did not see her recoil, not in anger, but in sorrow, not for your failure, but for your absence. You were no longer man. You were function, provider of praise, custodian of comfort. And her soul, ancient, feral, irrational, needs no comfort. It needs confrontation. With what? With the God behind your eyes, the one you refuse to become. There is a violence in her longing, a desire to dissolve into something greater, something crueler, something unshakable, but it cannot dissolve into a reflection. It must dissolve into fire. And so she searches in silence, in sex, in sorrow for the man who will not negotiate with her illusions, the man who burns through her expectations and leaves her bare before herself, not with rage, not with cruelty, but with indifference to the game. You thought she would follow your goodness, but she only follows your gravity, the way your silence reshapes her voice, the way your gaze pierces the mask she wears, not because you hate it, but because you don't believe in it. She feels it, that quiet refusal, that holy arrogance, that primal stillness that says, I do not need you, but I see you. And in being seen without flattery, without submission, without seduction, she is undone. This is why she stayed in your life longer than she should have. Not because she loved you, but because she remembered, for a brief moment, what it felt like to be powerless in front of a man who was not pretending to be powerful. She tasted it. Then she watched it disappear as you softened, as you explained, as you tried to be enough. But enough is never the question. The real question is, can you be untouched by her shifting tides? She does not want to be loved in the way you understand love. She wants to be consumed by presence, not cuddled by sentiment, but pierced by the sharp truth of a man who sees too much to be fooled. A man who does not need to dominate, because he is already sovereign. A man who does not fear losing her because he was never trying to keep her. And in that paradox, she melts. Not because he gives her control, but because he does not fear losing it. She wanted to feel him, the real him, the one who does not fold under pressure, who does not change when touched, who does not become what she needs, because what she needs is an illusion. What she craves is the man who destroys her need and replaces it with something holier: awe, fear, reverence, not for his violence, but for his refusal to be anything but himself. You were too human, too eager, too available. You looked at her with hope instead of judgment, and that was your end. The one she cannot forget is the one who does not blink, who hears her cries, her manipulations, her gifts, her temptations, and stays unmoved. Not cold, not numb, but untouchable, because his truth is older than desire, and she, being woman, feels it in her blood. This man is not mine. He is real. And so, the ideal dies. She no longer wants the romantic, the provider, the pleaser. She wants the stranger, the myth, the threat, the man who cannot be bent by comfort, who lives in tension, who does not offer her the dream but reminds her that she was never meant to sleep. But you became a lullaby. You were gentle when she needed the abyss. You were predictable when she needed the unexpected. You chased when she ran, explained when she tested, apologized when she wanted resistance. You offered the temple but forgot to become the god within it. So she left, or stayed in body while her soul vanished. And you sit now in the ruins of your own compliance, wondering where you went wrong. It wasn't a mistake. It was a surrender, not to her but to the ideal. The lie that love is peace, that devotion is enough, that softness is sacred. She does not worship softness. She worships the war she cannot win, the man she cannot break, the truth she cannot spin. You tried to be her home, but she lives on the edge. You tried to be her haven, but she thrives in uncertainty. You tried to soothe her storms, but her storms were never meant to be calmed. They were meant to be seen and survived by something stronger. The ideal is dead. She killed it herself. Every time she lost desire for the man who gave her everything, every time she silenced the one who listened too closely, every time she walked away from the comfort you offered, aching for the crucifixion of her illusions. You were never meant to be her savior. You were meant to be her reckoning. So now you stand alone, no longer a boy, no longer a supplicant, but perhaps a man in the making, one who no longer chases her gaze, but studies his own, one who no longer negotiates with beauty, but gazes through it, one who knows now she does not love what she understands. She loves what overpowers her, and the next time you feel her eyes on you soft, luminous, testing, you will not smile. You will not explain. You will not offer your heart like a coin to be exchanged for attention. You will remain still, cold, real, and in that moment she will remember. The man she could not shape, the man who broke the mirror, the man who let the ideal die and stood over its corpse without mourning, because love, real love, is not built in dreams. It is forged in fire, in the death of comfort, in the funeral of the lie. You killed the fantasy, and now she finally sees you. She stands in the doorway, barefoot, mascara smudged like war paint, whispering things she doesn't mean just to see if you'll react. But you do not move. You do not speak. You are not there to be understood. You are there as reminder that not all men kneel, that not all mirrors bend. And so she turns, not away, but inward, and as the silence falls heavy, alive, sacred, she is left, alone, with herself, with the ruin of her performance, with the memory of a man who did not flinch. No lesson, no closure, only a shape in the dark, unmoved, unreachable, real.